getting to you. Our guest has wondered if he's chopped liver, but he's not. And I always welcome Councillor Killick as a member of the other committee, and it's always nice to see you here too. How's that?
Thank you. Good
Very
morning.
much. Good morning. Thank you. So we have, that's attendance. So I'm calling the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Adoption of the agenda for today. Any changes to the agenda? Any additions? Any deletions? Nothing. So, okay, I'm going to declare the May 9th Community Living and Standing Committee meeting adoption of the agenda as accepted. And then appointments. Do we have I think we have the chair of the Community Service Advisory Committee. Is Lori online? Yep, there you are. Welcome. Thanks, Lori. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate you coming on a Monday morning. I hope you had a good Mother's Day yesterday.
It was pretty good. Pretty good. Can't complain.
Not like the mothers in the room that sits beside me. Anyway.
Well, okay. I could complain, but I'm not going to.
All right. No, please don't. Anyways, well, welcome. We'll get to your matter right away. But I actually have a proclamation. So this is unique for me. It's a block party proclamation, and we all enjoy block parties in our community. Matter of fact, I think we are known as a block party capital of Canada. We had 150 for 150 Canada celebration, and I always look forward to the invitations that go around. So hopefully we'll be able to partake a little bit more with the lifting of some of the restrictions. So I'm not going to put on my town crier voice, but I'm going to declare a proclamation. It's the 2022 block party season. So whereas a key value of St. Albert's social master plan is creating a sense of community and connectiveness where neighbors know one another and feel safe. And whereas St. Albert residents are active participants in creating safe, caring neighborhoods, as evidenced by how willingly neighbors stepped up to help one another and to manage and cope through the pandemic. And whereas the city of St. Albert embraces block parties so much that we are the national leaders in neighborhood development. And whereas block parties are a large part of neighborhood connection and are a favorite summer tradition in St. Albert. Now, therefore, on behalf of all of our council, I, Ken Mackay, in place of Mayor Kathy Heron, do hereby proclaim block party season officially opened, dated the 9th day of May, 2022. And I don't have anybody to present it to, so it's a virtual proclamation. Thank you.
Connie.
Hey, Connie, there you are. Did like Elizabeth phone you really quickly and say you're on air and brush your hair and get out of your pajamas and get online?
Good morning, and thank you so much for the proclamation. The work that we do in FCSS is integral in connecting neighbors, so we really appreciate the support.
Oh, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for showing up and accepting the proclamation for me. My first proclamation, and it was a good one.
Yeah, it is.
Anyways, approval of the minutes. Moving on to the next thing in the agenda. Any changes to the April 11th committee minutes? Seeing none, I will adopt them as well. So that's adopted. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to advisory committee business, we have the advisory committee minutes and agenda items. So that's 6.1. These are all the minutes from our different committees that our committee is responsible for. I just send congratulations, Councillor Bermansky and Councillor Killick. I see that your names are on the minutes where you're both the alternate and actually the person. So thank you for attending. I know like you guys are trying to get up to speed, but congratulations for taking the time and effort to show up, even though you're the alternate on these committees. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
And I know the committees must appreciate it as well. So did anybody notice any changes or any errors in any of those minutes? Can I just adopt those?
We'll need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion for that one. Councilor Bermansky, can I get a motion? It's on, it'll be in the chat.
It's not showing in chat yet, but I have it in paper
Okay,
form.
yeah, then go ahead then, however you feel comfortable.
Okay, that the unadopted minutes of the April 20th, 22 meeting of the Seniors Advisory Committee, unadopted minutes of the April 26th, 22 meeting of the Community Services Advisory Committee, unadopted minutes of the April 27th, 2022 meeting of the Arts and Development Advisory Committee, and the unadopted minutes of the April 28th, 22 meeting of the Environmental Committee be received as information.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Probably no discussion, so I'll just call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, Councillor Bermansky. Moving on to 6.2, request for standing committee motion from Community Service Advisory Committee, the Community Event Grant. Lorraine, are you going to speak on that? Go right ahead.
I will once I unmute myself.
That's
all right. So let's make sure I have the right one here. Yes, I do. Okay. So the Community Service Advisory Committee has sent forth the recommendation to council approve the community events grant recommendations as follows. For the organization African and African Descent Friendship Club of St. Albert, for the event Taste of Africa 2022, the amount of $5,000. For the organization of the St. Albert Latin Cultural Association, for their event 2022 St. Albert Latin Festival, amount of $5,000. And this is for a total recommendation of $10,000.
Thank you. Any comments about any of the applications or grants, Lorraine?
Not really. I think just the moral was after 2 years of COVID, we were like, all the events. Let's do all the things.
So
yes.
That's good. Any questions from committee members? No, seeing no questions in relation to 6.2, I don't have any. I'm with you, Lorraine.
Yeah,
Really,
throw all the money at the events.
I'm really looking forward to getting back out in relation to both of these events. Actually, the Taste of Africa and then the St. Albert Latin Festival. I think they held a kind of a mini version of that last year. So this is going to be a really welcome addition to our summer events. So I'm really looking forward to this. So anybody put forward the recommendation? Sheena, do you want to put that forward for me?
I can do that. Okay, here we go. The Community Living Standing Committee recommended council, I make this really big. The council approved the community grants recommendations as follows. Africans and African Descent Friendship Club of St. Albert for the Taste of Africa 2022 for $5,000, and the St. Albert Latin Culture Association for the 2022 St. Albert Latin Festival for $5,000 for a total recommendation of $10,000.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any discussion at all, Councillor Hughes?
I think this is very straightforward. I'm glad to see we're getting some community events. I was hoping for more, but we'll see what we can get, and it's a start. So I'm looking forward to here.
I agree. Any comments, Councillor Bermansky, or you're fine?
I just had the same comment because the list of people that we used to have in events, I hope they're all getting into it again and very excited about future days. So thank you.
Yeah, I echo all those comments. Any comments, Mayor Herron? No. All right, call the question. All in favor of the recommendation? And it's unanimous, so it's carried. Thank you very much. 6.3, request for standing committee motion from Community Service Advisory Committee in relation to the Community Capital Grant. Again, Lorraine, are you going to be preparing that or presenting that?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so the St. Albert Community Capital, now I'm messing it up. Maybe I should not be the one doing this one. Basically, we're requesting the motion that the Community Living Standards Committee recommends that the council approve the community capital grant recommendations as followed. For the organization Friends of Holy Family Catholic School Society for their slide replacement project, the amount of $6,227. For for the organization Friends of Lois E. Hole School Enhancement Society project for their outdoor pavilion, the amount of $0. For the St. Albert Bicycle Motocross Association for their BMX track upgrades and expansion project, the amount of $50,000. For the St. Albert Daycare Society to replace a commercial dishwasher, the amount of $9,788. For the St. Albert Gymnastics Club for their project to replace equipment, $50,594. For the St. Albert Rugby Football Club, their parking lot refurbishment, $27,103 for a total recommendation of $143,712.
Thank you very much. Any comments on any of the applicants or applications?
I see Anna's given you guys a pretty good rundown of it. I don't have any further comments other than the ones that she's given.
And as usual in the past, when an organization is making a request for funding, they have an opportunity to come in front of the committee and present. And did all of these organizations present in front of the committee?
Yes, they did.
All
right, thanks. Councillor Hughes, you have your hand up.
Thank you. So just, I think the public may have questions about why was $0 being recommended for the Enhancement Society? Was that clearly stated somewhere? I know that it, yeah, I know you said it, but could you just
of course, a lot of it was in camera, so I can't comment too much on it. But the moral basically of it was that we really felt that this was more of an outdoor classroom, which is not something that falls under this grant. We think it's a brilliant idea, but not under this grant.
Okay, I think that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I see in the comments that the committee determined that this project is also ineligible for this grant based probably on that. Presentation. Thank you. And I believe, Councillor Killick, you were present. Councillor Bermansky was present in relation to, so I know you're familiar with the robust discussions that take place and that the committee deals with this. So out of that amount, we usually have about 250,000. So we have approximately 110,000 left, approximately, using bad math. Not an account.
Approximately. We also have some carry forward from previous years, so we do have a fair amount left.
Okay, and we only have a one funding stream time frame for that, or
no, now it will be it'll be ongoing until the money is depleted for the year.
So another organization could come forward and make kind of go through you, be vetted, come up to the Community Service Advisory Committee, and if they have a project that they want to move forward to. I'm actually looking for, I'm leading you on that question because I'm actually looking forward to the next one of the presentations where we talk about a new corporate grant policy around that. So any comments from administration in relation to the recommendation? None? Okay, thank you. Can I get a, I like the cat, all right. Can I get a motion? Mayor Herron, do you want to read that one?
Sure, not in the chat though.
No, it's right up there.
Yeah.
It's right on the screen.
All right, it's a long one. Thanks.
I know, that's why I gave it to you.
The Community Living Standing Committee recommend that council approve the community capital grant recommendations as follows. The Friends of Holy Family Catholic School Society for the project of slide replacement amount of $6,227. To the Friends of Lois E. Hole School Enhancement Project for an outdoor pavilion. Oh, $0. Thank you. St. Albert Bicycle Motocross Association, the BMX Club, for their track upgrades and expansion project, $50,000. The St. Albert Daycare Society for replacement of commercial dishwasher in the amount of $9,788. To the St. Albert Gymnastics Club for some equipment replacement, the amount of $50,594. And to the St. Albert Rugby Club for parking lot refurbishment for $27,103 for a total of $143,712.
I didn't do the math, so I'm going to trust administration on that. So thank you. Any comments, Mayor?
No, I think these are all actually quite amazing projects. I think people are ready to get out and start making these investments so they can get back to their community. And, after a couple of years, this is super important. And I'm glad that the city continues to put this money aside for capital grant improvements because the community sure needs it. And we are happy to give it. So.
Yeah. I thank you, Mayor. And I'm the only comment I was going to make, and thank you for the attachments, because the attachment also includes going back since we started this community grant program in 2009. And the city has provided support in cash to a total of $3,571,281. I mean, that's a significant amount of support that the city has provided to many of our organizations that need that step up. And if you look at the number, like 97 in total, and some of them are repeat because I guess they were able to get into the grad program and understand it. But the wide variety of community agencies, support groups, schools, even the Rotary Club is here. But it's we've really helped out. So anyways, just thank you for administration. Anna, you're here, so it's very, very good. And thank you, Lorraine.
And CSC.
And yeah, I'm coming. Thanks, Lorraine, for your leadership in the group. And that's I appreciate it. As being a long time member of the Community Service Advisory Committee, I know the important work that that committee provides to our organizations and our residents of our community. So thank you. Any other comments from the committee members? Call the question then. All in favor of the recommendation? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to, thank you, Lorraine. I appreciate your attendance this morning.
Thank you for having me.
No, you're always welcome to attend. Moving on to 6.4, which is a request for standing committee motion from Arts Development Advisory Committee, the Young Artist Legacy Award Program, presented by Kathleen. Are you? Oh, there you are. Hi.
I am here.
Good morning.
Good morning. I don't have a presentation, but I am happy to answer any questions that stem from the Arts Development Advisory Committee motion.
And in that motion, anything at all, Councilor Bermansky, you're a representative on that committee, aren't you not? Well, we got Councilor Hughes who got her hand up there first. I'll go back to Councilor Bermansky. You're the representative. Any comments in relation to that?
I was just excited that these three young artists came forward. Like there was an age window, I believe it was 13 to 21, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was exciting to see three, at first it didn't look like there was going to be any applicants. So, there's so many talented young people in St. Albert. So I was excited that these all were honored. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councilor Hughes, with your question.
Thank you. So the Haley Benedict request, Haley's fairly well known in her skill set. She's done multiple public appearances. I'm not sure if she even has videos out. When you say attend Country Music Week, is she performing there or she just wants to go?
It's like the Country Music Week ends up being kind of a showcase conference. So there's sessions and networking events and those types of connecting with the music industry. So that's what she'd be attending, is those kind of the conference aspect.
Okay. Because it just seemed odd, I guess, to say I wanted to go to.
Yeah, it's not like she's attending the concerts. She's attending kind of the networking industry side of things.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. Anyways, for any other discussion or questions by committee members? Seeing none, Councilor Bransky, this is your committee. Can you put forward the recommendation?
I can do that. That the Community Living Standing Committee recommend that council award the following applications for the Young Artist Legacy Award Program. Yan Ji Zhang, funding request, $500. Yan would like to attend Nathan K. Art Studio. Haley Benedict, funding request, $500. Haley would like to attend Canadian Country Music Week. Cabell, excuse me if I pronounce this wrong, Cabell Beauchamp. Funding request, $400. Cabell would like to attend Fears for 5 Summer Dance Intensive for a total amount of $1,400.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Seeing none, then I'm going to call the question. Thank you. All in favor of the recommendation? And that again is unanimous. So thank you very much. I appreciate that, Kathleen.
Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. All right, moving on to our new business, which is 7.1, our corporate grant policy. And I see we have Anna in attendance and Craig Cameron as well. I think we have a PowerPoint, right?
We do. Thank you, Chair Mackay. I believe Danielle Podlovny was online.
Oh, sorry, Danielle, I did not see you. I'm not on the Zoom, so if I don't see the names, I apologize.
That's just fine, Councillor Mackay. Good morning, members of the Community Living Standing Committee. We are here today to present the Civic Granting Council policy for consideration. This policy is being brought forward as a result of the corporate grant review that has been underway since 2020 and as a follow-up to the workshop held with Council in early 2021. Anna Royer will give you an overview of the work to date, the policy presented, and once her presentation is complete, we would welcome any questions from members of committee or council. And with that, I'll turn it over to the presentation to Ms. Royer.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle. And thank you for having me here today. Pleased to present our draft policy. Late fall 2020, administration began the process of a corporate-wide grant review with the purpose of engaging in a policy-level discussion on our civic granting priorities and processes, to identify opportunities to improve grant administration, to review our current granting funding framework for its responsiveness to community needs and council priorities, and consistency in process and experience. Today, we are focusing on the key governance recommendation resulting from the review, which is the development of one overarching policy for civic grant funding. The policy establishes high-level principles under which funding programs and opportunities will be offered and outlines the roles for both council and administration within the overall granting process. 3 areas or sections which I would like to highlight within the policy include the granting principles, the area of grant responsibilities, excuse me, which will be further broken down into application review and funding recommendations, the overall grant funding envelope, and the determination of which civic grant programs will be offered to the community. And lastly, I will also touch on those organizations or programs which are identified as ineligible in the policy and how the management of exceptions will take place. We have spent a considerable amount of time reviewing granting principles through the review of our current policies and practices, researching other communities, and through dialogue with council, committees of council and staff members. The policy outlines a number of principles, but I want to draw your attention to a couple which have received more attention or conversation of late. The policy does state that non-St. Albert-based applicants will be able to apply for programs that support and benefit residents of St. Albert. This said, in all matters equal, priority will be given to St. Albert-based applicants. Consideration will be given to the capacity of the applicant to carry through with the project or program. Staff will utilize a few different measurements to assess this, including past history, amount of funding applied for, complexity of the project, scope of the project or program, and other commitments organizations may be tied to. When reviewing reporting required, the value of the grant will assist in determining the rigor required within the reporting process. For example, if we have a business development, or a business beautification grant that may receive like a $250 grant, we would maybe require a photo and a receipt. Whereas a community capital grant applicant we would be looking for a written report, all the receipts, an outline of the success and challenges, volunteer involvement, and the final impact to the community. So it will depend on the value of the project. The next area within the policy I'd like to touch on identifies grant responsibilities for the review, recommendation, and or approval of funding allocations. The draft policy formalizes council's authority to delegate existing granting functions as well as grant funding approval. This clause is intentionally broad to allow the policy to stand independent of any changes in committee structures, grant programs, and council-directed thresholds for funding approval. Specific delegation of authority over any of the grant functions would occur outside and after the approval of this policy and would be captured in respective bylaws or administrative directives. Currently, council delegates application review to its civic agencies, recommendations on funding amounts to civic agencies and committees, and retains approval for all grant funding. Through this policy, council could choose to amend these delegations with consideration to the following. Allocation at different points would allow for quicker disbursement of funds in support of community needs. Allocation at different points decreases resources required by higher levels to review applications, make recommendations, and approve funding. Council may choose to retain the responsibility for allocation of large grant investments and for appeals to grant allocations at other levels. Civic agencies will continue to provide subject matter expertise through the review and, if council so chooses, the approval process of grants. And council will receive an annual update of all grant allocations and outcomes of granting through the CAO. And I did attach to the agenda report an example of another community, Wood Buffalo, and their annual report. Now, ours may end up looking somewhat different, but it does give an example of what council could expect in that annual report. The policy identifies that grant funding for programs falling under this policy will be determined by council through an annual funding request within the operating base budget. The request will be pegged to a per capita formula based on results from the most recent census. Grant program funding will be allocated from the granting envelope considering historic funding levels, council priorities, community need, and the current suite of grant programs. Unused or unallocated dollars will be placed in a grant reserve for future civic grant program allocations to serve as a funding source for emergent funding requests or to provide additional funds to oversubscribed programs. This would create a more predictable budgeting that is responsible to population growth, builds an identified source of funding to address emergent needs or requests that fall outside of grant program conditions. And we certainly experienced that during the last couple of years. There's been a few different instances where groups may have come forward to council, or maybe council may have wanted to do some emergent grant programs due to COVID and to respond to community need at that time. This additional source would allow us to be more flexible within the granting program. And it would allow for increased flexibility to allocate funding between grant programs to meet or address acute community needs. We'll be able to be much more nimble in that response to the community. The policy identifies that the CAO will have the authority to create or remove a civic granting program or make changes in scope to a civic granting program and is required to report on all granting to council annually. The CAO can change grant programs or program criteria within the parameters of the civic granting policy to respond to changing council priorities or community needs. This strengthens the governance role for council with respect to civic granting. Council certainly is responsible for the policy, the overall governance, where similar to other programs run through the city, the CAO would be our administration, then looks after the implementation and the actual programs themselves. This allows administration to conduct regular grant program reviews, along with civic agencies, recommend changes to grant programs or criteria to ensure programs are relevant and responsive to community need. Grant program changes will be communicated to council as part of the annual grant report. So again, if council felt the need or felt the desire or had heard from the committee that there was a need for a program that maybe we weren't presenting, they still would have opportunity to voice that to administration. It's more the day-to-day implementation of the programs would fall under the CAO. The policy clarifies instances in which a group is not eligible for funding. For example, they're governed or funded from other levels of government, they have separate funding agreements with the city, or challenge the nonpartisan or non-secular nature of council, or where an existing city program does not fit within the scope of the proposed policy. The identified instances reflect a review of current policies, historical direction, past granting and comparative community research. For example, specialized scope, the FCSS funding program for preventative social services. That program would not be part of this policy. They would maintain their original policy that they have right now, and it would be kept separate. The funding within that policy would also be kept separate. They would not be included in part of that, the bulk or the one ask that you would see on the budget, on the annual budget. FCSS program funding would maintain their own budget line. Another program that would be considered specialized scope that would not be included in this policy is the Municipal Historic Reserve Program. That program is very complex, has many tentacles. It involves provincial agencies and it involves other agencies within our community. And it's very specialized. So that program itself, that program would also maintain their own policy. Any groups with separate agreements, such as the AHF, they would not be would not fall under this granting policy. Non-secular groups, churches would not be eligible. Alternate level of government, so groups that fall under hospitals, schools, individual subsidies. So any of the individual subsidies that we provide, such as the Senior Homeowners Property Tax Assistant Grant, that does not fall under this policy. That is a subsidy going directly to an individual for a specific financial need. Another one would be the utility tax relief grant. That one would not fall under as well. Administration is recommending the policy take effect as of September 1st, 2023. A delayed effective date will allow administration to realign existing grant program process, review administrative processes for efficiencies, and engage with the community to effectively communicate any changes in process and opportunities to potential grant applicants. Included in the AR recommendation is the rescinding of a number of policies. An attachment 4 to the AR provides a listing of the policies with the link to each. So the intent really is to allow us that time in order to adjust our programs. Right now, you may be wondering what happens to the policies. We're rescinding them. Where do the programs lie? An administrative directive will be created for each of those programs. So Community Capital Grant will have an administrative directive, which really outlines the steps that will be taken in order to implement that program to the community. We anticipate there'll be minimal changes to those grant programs. It's just that they now fall under administrative actions. In addition, once a policy is approved, administration will begin to prepare to return to council with a proposed breakdown related to the delegation of approval for granting allocations. At that time, council may choose to accept, amend, or not approve the recommendations for delegation and continue to retain all approval of grants. Regardless of the outcome, the policy being presented today is designed to continue to stand through any potential changes to delegation of approval, included changes in committee or civic agency structure. If council decides to delegate approval of authority to other bodies, then amendments to the impacted bylaws associated with those agencies or those committees would be prepared and brought forward for approval. And I thank you for your attention and consideration of the proposed policy, and we'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thanks, Anna. I'll start off the questions. I appreciate the presentation, as you can imagine. Can you go back to that slide, the CAO delegation? So we're not saying that the CAO will be the one that's responsible for actually approving the actual grant amount or not. All we're saying is that just allows some flexibility in relation to the administration of these programs. So for example, if can you give me an example so I don't speak out of turn here?
So was this the slide that you were referring to?
No, there's one that with the CAO that you said the CAO function where
For the program approval?
well, I believe it's for the overall policy, isn't it, in the sense of it? You said you've got the CAO delegation. I think you had one.
That was
Page 8.
Page 8?
Yeah.
Page 8.
So this would be as far as the program itself.
Yeah, thanks.
That would be if the CAO had the authority to create or remove programs. So again, you would be receiving an annual report. So if we found during the year that, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say, and this is just an example. Let's say community gardens are really taking off. And through the year, we've looked, we've researched, we've heard from the community. They really want us to provide some type of a funding source, some kind of program for community gardens. And we realize, we take a look and we say, you know what, community events, we seem to have a little bit of extra money in that program. Let's try a pilot on that. Let's try that and see if that will work. The CAO would have the ability to allow for that pilot program to happen. And then it would be reported back to council at the end of the year in the annual report. So that would be creating a program into it.
Can we do that?
Programs, if we had, pardon me?
That's a good one. Let's do
Yeah, if we had some type of a program that just constantly was not receiving any uptake, we heard from the community, you know what, we really need changes to this. Again, it's that administrative, that operational level that we would be making those changes, all still falling under the scope of the policy.
So something like a beautification grant for our downtown businesses, it's not, they wouldn't have to come to us for that, or they don't come to a advisory committee of council. Administration would handle that entirely.
So if I might,
Yep,
Councilor
go ahead.
McKay, I think there's two different delegations of authority there. So the slide that we see on the screen there really speaks to program creations.
Okay.
So in the case of beautification, that program exists.
Yeah.
The other area of delegation for council comes down to that review, recommendation, and approval piece. This policy doesn't give direction on how those should be delegated. What it does do is clarify council's authority to make those decisions. And what we propose is that if this policy is passed, we come back and then review what those appropriate delegations might be. So in the example of a beautification grant, it could be that approval for that is delegated at an administrative level or to a particular committee.
And you could also, let's say, have one of our advisory committees approve up to a certain level of funding. So let's say, rather than having it come back to council for formal approval, you could just say CLSC approves a grant of up to amount, like let's say $2,500 or $5,000. Potentially, that's what this policy will allow us to do.
Right. So correct. It doesn't do that specifically, but it clarifies council's role to delegate those at a future date.
But it gives maybe a little bit more flexibility or freedom, so that let's say if we got approached, for example, we've just had a group trying to support Ukraine.
Mhm.
Now they come to administration with a proposal. I mean, they could either come up to council or we could assist them at a certain level. So that's kind of the last question before I see that we have our hands up, and I apologize, but the grant funding envelope as proposed is based on a per capita formula. So would that take all of our existing funding, like our community capital grant at 250,000, our other community event grant amounts at smaller amounts, and it would basically, we would determine, like you said, based on about $15 per capita, council could raise that or lower that, and then that allows the flexibility. Am I getting that right? In the sense of we would have one pot of money, so we could actually say if one of our grants is got like community event or community capital right now has 110,000, we could use it in another area. Would that allow? And who makes that decision? How does that work?
Correct. That is the intent, and that would come back to the CAO, because again, that would be a budget item that would be approved, and then we'd work within that budget. That would not, as I said, would not include the FCSS program funding or the ones that are not included. So it would only include, and I'll just run through.
Yeah.
I think there's 8 of them. So it'd be the council sponsorship, community events grant, community capital grant, the Young Artist Legacy Award, outside agency, environmental initiatives. We have the arts micro grant, which has been on the verge of getting going that has had funding assigned to it, and the commercial area beautification grant.
Okay,
So that would include those grants.
right. And the intent is not to get rid of the advisory committees at all. We would maintain the advisory committees.
Absolutely, absolutely. They do play a very important role regardless of how we go. I mean, administration, I know personally myself, I do really rely on the advisory committees to assist. Their opinion is always so, yeah.
Okay. And then, and I apologize, you guys, but these are the questions I have written down. But so, I mean, at any point, they can, a fund agency or someone that had applied through the process to get funding and was turned down, they can still appeal it to council, or is that removed now?
They can always appeal it to council. Yes, that is once council certainly always would retain the ability to.
Okay. I apologize. I don't know who had their hand up first, but I'm just looking at the top of my screen. Councillor Hughes, that's who I have first. Sorry.
I think I put up my hand first, so you're okay. So where in the grant does it say the CAO has this authority? I'm trying to look under the actual policy, Anna. And I don't see where he says he has the authority. I'm not questioning that it's not a part of it. I just don't, oh, here, he shall go under the responsibilities. Got it. Okay. So I'm trying to, okay. This policy causes me great stress. So under this new policy, which of the current organizations that would be receiving funding would not be eligible? Would it take any of them off of the list?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, no, it would not.
Okay.
Again, when we rescind the policies, so that again wouldn't be until this policy went into effect. It's really, we're moving the current programs into administrative directives. We anticipate there'll be some adjustments to make sure that we are still following the overall governing policy, but we anticipate there'll be limited changes to the programs.
Okay. So when I see this, it looks to me like council had a lot of decision making in the policies. We could change the parameters, we could change any of the necessities. There was a lot that council had a say in. And now it's all being taken out and put as an administrative level. And all we're approving is about $1 million every year. So I'm trying to figure out why. Like I realize you're like, oh, this is governance, but really what we're doing is just taking away any say in what's happening. And we're just being notified on an annual basis. I don't care how pretty the report is about what's been decided on our behalf. So I'm trying to figure out why this is necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. I mean, I certainly do understand that, and certainly not surprised by the questions at all. We really are, and as you said, we're really trying to keep this at the governance level. Maybe, I'm not sure if this is a good comparison, but we think of programs that we offer at Service Place. We know we have budgets to run Service Place, but the programs, the implementation, that day-to-day, that operational level is kept at administration. So we're seeing this grant funding as it's a program that we offer to the community. We're notifying council probably more than we do with other programs, and council always, when the annual reports come forward, or if wants to provide direction, always can do that. Pretty much every grant will still go to a committee, which a council member does sit on, and the results from those committee levels do come up through the minutes to council. So there is still opportunity for the council members sitting on those committees to add their voice into any types of decisions that are made, and to understand if we're changing any of those administrative directives or program changes. We're just really trying to keep it at a governance level and follow under the principles that council has laid out.
Right. I think there's a large difference between allocating grant money and operating. Service Place is similar to trying to operate public works. It's very different than allocating grant money. So that's, I think we're going to have to disagree on some of this. So what I'm hearing too is that if somebody came from the community and that we call it community feedback, and said, I wanted a grant for XYZ, the CAO could just simply do it. And then council would find out about it anywhere between 1 and 11 months later. That's what I'm hearing here, that someone could come in and say, I would like you to do a grant. The CAO decides they either like the person or like the idea, and then just simply allocates the money. And there's no public awareness that the money is being used for this purpose. That's what I'm seeing here when I see the CAO decision.
So Councillor Hughes will also develop a number of operational protocols, which will do a process as far as the steps. If somebody did come forward and were interested, certainly administration would do due process as far as researching, was there community need? Has there been interest? It wouldn't be quite as easy as just now you have a grant for XYZ. There'd be a number of things we would look into. I think repeated hearing this from the community a number of times, if it was coming out in surveys, it would not be quite that easy, but we would have a process in place. And yet at the end of the day, the CAO would be able to provide that. Now, we could certainly in the annual report provide a section we've talked a bit about as far as proposed programs or proposed changes to programs which council, excuse me, would receive. And certainly at that point, if they determined they did not want this program to go forward, certainly could voice their opinion.
So if the CAO decides to put a program forward and council disagrees with it, what's the council's ability, other than just letting you know that they don't like it? What is the ability to start or end a program for council at this moment?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I do believe that council always has the authority to direct the CAO on matters. So while the authority for a program creation or deletion sits with the CAO, council does have the authority to direct the CAO around those matters as well.
And we'll find out about the changes annually, not as it happens, but annually in this current policy.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, again, I would say that there would be a mandate to report at least annually. I suggest that there's a good communication between the CAO and council, and it would be very unlikely that it would be a full year before council was made aware of any proposed or actual changes to any of the granting programs.
Yeah. Okay, I just, when I had one more question, Councillor McKay, and I'm just trying to figure this out, and if I'm not, I'll just come back. Oh, so the grant reserves, the outside organizations category is always tight. We always have an over request for it. So would this allow the committee to then use more than the allocated amount for them, or how would that work? Because like they say, it's like 695,000 or something, right? So they come in 695, our requests come in at 780. Could they then say, we recommend that you do 720? Would they actually have like a larger envelope than what's been previously allocated, or how would that work?
Councillor Hughes, that would be something that the CAO would look at as well too. So potentially there could be, because we built in this per capita amount, I would anticipate, we're looking right now when we first start, the grant programs would not change in what the allocation currently is, or the percentage of allocation of the overall pot. But yeah, potentially if we had, if the CSAC had determined they wanted to recommend a higher amount than what was in their pot, there could be the opportunity to look at if there were additional funds in the reserve in using some of those funds.
And the delegations, right now, you said the delegations of who decides who's going to be approved is going to be decided later. Why are we deciding that later and not now for the approval?
Yeah, for a couple of reasons. We wanted to be able to present the policy without the focus on the delegations. The delegations is something that could happen, but doesn't have to happen in order for the policy to come forward. If council so desires, then we could, we do have a plan of what that could look like, but we would bring that forward at a later date.
So if the city manager created a brand new grant program and for whatever reason, would it then require council's approval of the funding at the end of the day at this, as it stands right now. I mean, I suspect it's going to come back and say we want to take it off of council's hands, but that we'll see what happens in the future. But let's say, so the CAO says we're doing a new grant program specific for helping Ukraine. Any organization that wants to come can now come for $30,000 worth of budgeting. So would that then come for council's approval of the grants as it stands right now?
Okay, then. So through the chair to Councillor Hughes, thank you for the question. So the way that it stands now, there's two ways that funding could be allocated to a new grant program. One would be through a reallocation of the approved granting envelope. The second would be through the budget process, asking for an increase to that budget envelope, which would supply the additional funding needed to support a new grant program.
So the envelope doesn't change, but he wants to use the money that's in a reserve for a different project. Council would not be asked to approve any, like right now, we just were asked for approval from all these other organizations today. Would we be asked to approve it for the ABC organization for the new grant? Would it come before council for approval of the funding after the CAO recommended it and the committee said they wanted to do it? Would it still come for our approval?
Right, through the chair to Councillor Hughes.
Diane wants to jump. Go ahead, Craig, finish. I'll jump in after. She's trying.
Yeah, delegate to you or.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. So just in summary of that being a governance grant, so council, based on this policy, will still retain all authority right now to approve funding. So right now, if you approve this policy, it does not change anything. Council still approves all grants, all funding. The envelope of the funding amount is still in council's approval. So all of that is still contained within this policy. What administration would bring forward afterwards is each of the grant programs we currently have. At this point, we're saying those would stay as is unless council wanted to change that. So we'd bring forward all of the programs and say, you know, CSAC could approve this one or that one, or council still has the authority to approve this one. That's when you can tell us how you'd like. If council wants to retain authority on all grant approval, that could still take place with this policy. If you would like to delegate that authority to approve grants to CLSC or CSAC, you could do that. So at this point, we're not asking for that specific detail. This policy says council still retains all authority for grant approval, all authority for the granting envelope, and specifically to the granting principles, which I think are really important. The principles in this grant are what allow the grants to be granted based on these principles, which we're asking council to really look at and approve those.
So just as this a yes or no. So I'm ABC organization, I'm applying for a new grant. The CAO created a new grant program. He's saying yes to $20,000. It comes before council for approval right now. Is that correct?
Correct.
I mean, to be a fair, Councillor Hughes, I think a lot of the details are in the are going to come out in relation to the development of policy, and potentially it'll allow. I mean, we're talking about the CAO as if that's one individual. That individual, of course, will delegate down to their individual areas, and that will be where the recommendation comes from. I see that it where. I think that there's still a little bit of kind of the details in relation to how this will all kind of come out and what the gates would be. Like, you know, you've identified 20,000, maybe council only says you can only do it for 5,000, right? And something
I'm not
like
sure we get that though, Councillor McKay. I don't know if we get to say 5. I don't know if we get to even, other than being informed the money's been spent, even have any say in approvals. And that's what I'm trying to figure out is the process.
Yeah,
What
and
is
I
the
don't think
process
that,
here?
to be
The
fair,
process
though, I don't-
matters. Do we
Well,
have approval or
absolutely.
do we not?
Absolutely,
That's
but
what I
that's
wanna
not what's in front of us this morning in relation to that. They're asking actually that the whole overarching policy, and then the details will come back. But and I guess that's what we could ask when that's supposed to be coming back. I know that they're recommending an effective date of September 1st, 2023. But again, council always has the authority in relation to what that would determine. So I mean, if administration comes back and recommends a certain amount, we can either agree or disagree and set a different amount that requires the administration to come back. I mean, that's where I'm looking at.
Right. What I don't know is if they're coming to us to ask for that amount, Councillor McKay.
Well,
I don't know if we're just being notified of it 11 months later.
Ms. Enger just said
She
that
just said they were.
they were.
Yeah.
Chair to Council.
I heard the funding envelope of $1 million is being approved. I'm not hearing about the specific areas being approved, and that's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
Are we only approving the 1,500,000 or 550,000, or are we approving as they come in as well? That's what I'm asking.
So through the chair to Councillor Hughes, so excuse me, right now in the policy, council still has authority for delegation or for approval of all funding. That has not changed. So in that policy, it is still council authority to approve all granting.
Just like we did this morning?
Yep, yes, yeah,
There you
just like we did this morning.
Okay, so if the city manager creates a new program and decides to give money or recommends that there's money being done, it will still come for council to ultimately approve those funds before they're distributed. Is that correct?
Correct. At this point, yes, unless council chooses to delegate that authority to another body.
Right.
But that,
Yeah, and
has not been determined yet. So right
Okay,
now,
I'm
it's-
afraid of what you just said there, but okay, that's it for questions for now.
Okay, well, yeah, all right. Well, we're open to discussions. Councilor Urbanski, thank you. Go ahead.
So I had some comments here, and I mean, on these committees, I appreciate hearing the information as the year goes on. Like we're talking about the young artists now and all these specific things. And I find it very, very interesting because the community, like administration has the guidelines at the meetings, but then the committee, like, community services, for example, like their committee is so solid in the debate that came out of it and the different directions they went, like, from what was presented to that committee to the dollars that they put out at the end was a dramatic difference. And they were very thorough, in their thought process and in what the community wanted. So it was a very good representation about what the community itself wants. So to me, the concern is only being notified once a year. And then the other thing is there's a carryover right now in a reserve that's showing the process is very thorough and taking good care of dollars. So my concern is if something else came up and then all of a sudden the pot's gone, we wouldn't know about it. And then administration may be coming forward to council for more money following if they need it for something else that comes up. And I would like to see it where the public, the public has a true trust in council in what these grant things are and have them being excited about coming forward with their events. I feel that if it's just administration without the committees and the people and the council being involved as it goes along, it loses a lot of the, the public trust. All of a sudden, it's just like buying a permit or something like that. So and these committees, the ones that we're taking off the list, to me are all.
Where did you, Councilor Urbanski, nobody's taking committees off the list through the process.
Well, the list that we have here in the motion, right? It says to remove these granting. There's a list of several in here.
Those are specific programming in relation to identifying but we're not eliminating the committee. We're trying to just streamline some of the policies, and then administration will come back with new policies around how those funds are administrated and through and where and however, sorry for lack of that term, but from the questions was asked by myself and by Councillor Hughes, we're still got that process where members of council will sit on committees. Organizations will still have that ability or have to go through that check process. So there is still that internal auditing and approval process and ultimate approval through and appeal through council. So we're not eliminating the committees.
If these policies are removed, how would we even know about them? We'd get a report at the end of the year, but realistically.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Craig.
Sorry, thanks through the chair to Councilor Bermansky. So the policies that you see rescinded there is due to the structure that we have currently. So our grant programs exist in council policy. If this policy was approved, it would supersede the others. So what you see in terms of rescinding those policies is just the reordering of that down into a bylaw level. So the programs would not disappear. The authorities of our current committee structures would not disappear. They would just be reordered from an administrative process. So that's what you see there in terms of the rescinding on the proposed policy.
Okay, so you're saying they would have been presented to committee exactly the same way they were this past week.
Exactly.
That's correct.
If,
Go ahead,
Okay.
Nick. Go ahead.
I'm confused in this here and like the funding. I just don't understand, like when we just hear about it at the end of the year, it's sort of past the fact.
Okay, I think we're getting confused about this report at the end of the year.
yeah,
Like, can we just
Yeah.
forget the report at the end of the year? I appreciate the report, but I won't read it because I will have read every of the committee agendas. I will have sat at that standing committees. I would have approved it on consent at council. So let's just forget about this report once a year. It's still the same process. It's just it's now streamlined. It's a big overarching policy with underlying.
Okay.
It's better governance, essentially.
Any follow-up, Councillor Bermansky? Because Councillor Killick has a question.
I'll let Councillor Kelly go. Thank you.
I'm going to try and phrase the question is to say that it's my understanding of what we're proposing here is we have all of these separate standalone approval and granting processes for the 7 or 8 committees, Anna, that you read off. And what we're simply trying to do is bring in one overarching policy that is almost exactly the same as each one of those individual ones and kind of combine it at a higher level into one overarching policy so that all of the granting and reviews are all done the same under the same guidelines. And it just gets rid of 7 policies and rolls them up into one big one. And each one of the steps in the current level of the committees is still kept in the overarching policy. So we're not losing anything. And in fact, we could in later set some levels that council could delegate authority down to this through this new policy to say the committees have the green light at $5,000 across all of them. So it's consistent, and anything above 5,000 has to come for standalone approval. And this is just a, if you will, a paper cleanup exercise that will put all of these policies under the same governance, same wording, same language, same bylaw. That's what we're being asked to approve here. Have I got that
yep,
right?
that's excellent way to put it. That was wonderful.
Okay.
That's absolutely wonderful. And if I can just even expand on yours, for example, if council decided that the CSAC or the EAC, those levels could review, recommend, approve, not just recommend, up to 5,000, then though that information would still come forward to CLSC in the minutes of the meeting, and then would still go forward to council. So there would be the knowledge of what had happened, but it would just, some of the grants that came forward today may have stopped at the Arts Development Advisory Committee or the CSAC. The policy allows council to delegate that if they choose. Not today. We're not looking for that today. We're just looking for the ability to delegate it, or potentially those quick wins, maybe under 500, maybe the CAO could do those really quick win emergent grants. That if for some reason there was a program for that, a neighborhood grant, a quick win one that then didn't have to go through all the processes, maybe if that was under 500. There's different dollar value amounts. But again, today, we're not looking for that approval. You will probably see not too many changes at this point in time. Yeah.
So my follow-up is then when is the administration proposing to come back to council with those recommended delegation thresholds? Obviously prior to next year, but later this year or?
Yeah, I believe the intent is later this year, once the policy has been been approved, then we do have a number of colleagues within the city that have all invested into this policy, provided information. So it's a matter of, again, getting together, having further discussions, and really determining what's best for the community, what council's appetite may be, and then bringing that forward. So I would say probably by the fall is what we were looking for. Yeah.
So maybe,
Yeah.
so
Okay, thank you.
thank you. And I see your hand, Councilor Romansky. I'm just going to have a follow-up question in relation to that. So is it maybe the first of the recommended motions? I mean, you're asking for us to make a recommendation to council that we will approve the civic granting policy change and it with an effective date of September 1, 2023. But I'm sensing that there's a little bit of lack of comfort with approving the overarching without seeing the meat of the different individual policies. And so I'm wondering whether or not we're kind of getting a little bit further down the road without saying, why would we grant overall policy changes without knowing kind of what that policy is? So maybe are we missing a step here that where we come back with what the policy actually looks like? Or sorry, go ahead.
Thanks to the chair. So I think I hear the cart and horse kind of conversation around this one. I would suggest that if we did adopt the policy as drafted before those conversations, that the current delegations as outlined in the policies and bylaws would hold. So we wouldn't see any changes to those delegations of authority. Those would only happen after a conversation. So we can have them before or after at council's discretion.
Well, I'm just saying, thinking like you can sort of see some of the council questions they're asking for the details. So there's some worry or confusion in relation to how certain monies will be accounted for and allocated and then reported on, and then and roles and responsibilities as to what does that actually look like if a CAO, has that authority, or maybe there's an opportunity like we just approved at committee $1,400 for the Young Artist Grant. So I mean, that goes on to consent agenda, and as 5 years that I've been on councils, I've never seen one pulled off unless it's some specific. So I mean, that might be one, for example, where we say the Arts Committee actually has approval and it doesn't have to come back. It just gets reported somehow and accounted for. So, I mean, I think that's where I think maybe rather than saying we approve it with the effective date of September 1, that committee, you guys come back to this committee with what the policies looks like, and then we can make the recommendation on moving forward. Or am I adding too much complexity, too much work that you guys for the administration before you can be assured that that's what's happening?
I think you've identified the balance from our perspective. It does take considerable resources to pull together those recommendations.
Yeah.
So I think from an administrative standpoint, we were looking for some certainty before moving that direction. But if council is more comfortable in having those conversations first,
Well, I mean, I've got, just for example, sorry to interrupt you, Craig and Diane. I mean, Councillor Hughes has actually put forward amended motion to remove the CAO portion, but I think with maybe perhaps some more clarity around the roles and responsibilities, then maybe that would be more maybe we don't need the amended. And I would much rather see that than accept something and then add it on. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Other comments?
I'm fine with the way it is. Honestly, this really goes down to trust of our administration. It's simple as that.
Okay.
And the way you've described it is the combining and the streamlining and blah, blah, blah. With council still seeing it through committee representation, through standing committees and through council. I don't understand where the mistrust is coming from, because I have complete trust in what you're doing and what you've described. And your example is perfect, Anna, with the community gardens. If you were to go into the current process to establish a program to grant for community gardens, it would take months and months, because it would have to go, through committees and then through standing committees and through council. And if we're on summer break, like all these things just get in the way. And I can guarantee you a community garden program would probably be approved by council. But the way you're proposing it is, and the part that Councillor Hughes wants to move is establishing programs. I think we want to establish more programs in this community to give out more money where is the need and where there is the need, and take it away from where there's not. But
Okay.
I am completely fine with the steps that we're taking because I have complete trust in you guys.
We're not in debate, but I appreciate it. I was just seeking questions and comments in relation to that. Councilor Romanski, you had your hand up and I interrupted. Sorry.
I just had one more question, like say one of these groups, for example, came forward to, to administration CAO and wanted, $260,000, for example. And then would there be something given back to them, like a choice of, well, we can give you $40,000, or is that not debated at that level? Would that money just be handed out?
I would think that would be the extreme example, and I would never imagine council delegating that much authority to them. So anyways, but that's just my point. Administration, go ahead.
Yeah, an amount such as that certainly would, even in discussions that we've had, that is certainly a large amount that we would always be moving it up the line as far as the review to council's final approval. In previous discussions, we certainly have not looked at anything over 100,000 not going to council. We really, maybe under 100,000 might come to Community Living Standing Committee. Over 100,000 would go to council. But those would be large amounts. And again, that whole debate and discussion as far as those thresholds or those amounts was something that we would bring back to council. And if council wanted to delegate that, then we would change the bylaws we needed to. But at this time, the process is still the same. It goes through the review, goes to the committees, CLSC, and then to council. No change.
Okay, thanks. I'm still confused in this one about where the decisions are actually stopping. Like you're saying that committees could do smaller amounts, but then you're saying administration wants to do the smaller amounts. So I'm still not understanding this.
So maybe just through the chair to Councillor Mansky. So basically this policy is really just a cleanup of governance.
Yeah.
It still leaves all authority with council to approve the amount of the funding envelope, the delegation of who approves those grants. None of that changes in this policy. And so approving this policy today does not change the way grants are administered. It just would provide administration flexibility to bring back to council potentially down the road some options of how you might want to delegate or allocate grants.
Okay, actually, yeah. And thank you, Councillor Killick. I think you captured the kind of the gist of it in my mind as well. And I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments in relation to this before we move on to recommended motions?
Councillor Mackay, can I jump in?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Sorry, Councillor Jolie. I did not know you were online.
You know what? I just jumped on. I've been listening to the whole conversation while having my daughter in a dentist appointment. I just wanted to throw in there that I really kind of appreciate the work that went into this policy. And I'd echo Mayor Herron's comments that I'm completely comfortable with going ahead with this this policy and rescinding the kind of following the recommendation. And I have trust in staff to, really hear us and get this done. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
All right, I appreciate that. And I apologize. I'm not on Zoom, so I didn't see you come on. Anyways, I hope everything's okay with your daughter. Any other comments or questions by the members in attendance? Okay. Mayor Herron wants to put forward the recommended motions.
Sure. That the Community Living Standing Committee recommend to council that policy C-CC 23 civic granting be approved with an effective date of September 1st, 2023. And that the Community Living Standing Committee recommends to council that on the day that policy C-CC 23 civic granting becomes effective, the following policies are rescinded. So policy C-CC 21, council sponsorship, CCS 02, community events grant program, CCS 06, community capital grant program grant, CCS 10, which is the Lieutenant Governor Distinguished Young Artist Legacy Program, CCS 22, which is outside agencies operating grant program, CED 05, community festival funding, CED 06, community significant events stimulus fund, and CEUS 02, which is the environmental initiatives grant program. And the third recommendation is that Community Living Standing Committee recommends to council that the direction provided to administration in the agenda report 2467 be deemed as compiled with due to the presentation of draft policy CCC 23 civic granting. Is that right?
Is that, yeah.
It should be complete.
Complete.
Deemed as complete with due to the presentation of draft. See,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so we had a motion.
Yeah.
And this is now completing that motion. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Good.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, process by Councillor Hughes, do you want to still move forward with your thing? So do I have to accept your motion and then take the recommended motion? So that's the process? Yeah, okay, it's on there. I will accept that. And then Councillor Hughes has submitted, I don't know, Ledge, you have it? Ledge has got it. So Councillor Hughes, do you want to read in your amendment?
Yeah, so that the recommended policy C-CC-23 is amended that under responsibilities, the CAO shall be established civic grant programs is removed.
All right, okay, I will accept the amendment. Go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Okay, so the rationale for this is, first of all, if someone starts telling me again that they trust administration blindly, that is how you get into trouble. You can trust somebody, but you still require accountability. So please stop saying, I don't trust staff because I want to have accountability in our programs. That's just an absolute insult to everybody. But when I look at this and say establish grant programs, and I'm hearing we could have a community grants program grant. Sure, we can. And the council probably approve it, probably will. That doesn't mean it shouldn't go for council approval. It shouldn't be that we shouldn't have public awareness about it, that the CAO can just create new programs that nobody's even aware of without having any approval. Council approves most items in front of it. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't come for council approval. So when I look at this and then I'm hearing, oh, it could take a long time. Actually, it won't under this new policy, because our new policy is we say yes to a grant. In this case, if we don't have this, we don't have to say yes to a grant. And then administration creates all the details to it. So they would be doing that anyway. The only thing that would change is that there would be one motion that says, go ahead and with either the current allocation or additional funding allocation, we are agreeing to a new grant program. That's the only thing. Everything else with the policy would be considered administrative under this new policy. So it would not drag it out for months and months and months. There would not be an extra delay. It would just simply have public awareness and council approval that we agree that's a good idea. And if we think it's a good idea, that's awesome, because then they're not bringing forward ideas that we would disagree with that would be bad. But that doesn't mean that we should not have council as a body should not be aware of it before it happens and agree to have it happen. And so if it requires a 1 week delay to put it on the schedule, that's the way government works. But this current program has no need, zero, to have the CAO just create new programs on a whim and just say, I think this is a good idea. Some people approached me. Community feedback is vague. What is it, like 5 people come and ask 6 times and then they get it? Like, it's not clear as to what the definitions are, but it takes everything out of council's prerogative and just simply saying, you can take the programs and align them, fine. You're going to give us an annual report, fine. But if you're going to create a new program, you're going to need to ask us about it. Simple as that. And then all the details are out of council's control anyway. So this is just about making sure that the public and council are aware of the programs as they come forward if there's new ones. And by removing that, that's all it does. So that's why I'm suggesting that that's, to me, that's overstepping the boundary of what we require. And, you know, council, we have 2 meetings a month. Often they're not even very long. I feel like we are delegating all of our decision-making out. And we are here to make decisions. And so agreeing to new grant programs should be a decision the council makes, even if it's unanimously agreed to. It should be something that council says, yes, go forward with. And that's why I'm suggesting we take this out.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Any other discussion, comments?
I'll jump in.
Mayor Herron?
And honestly, Councillor Hughes, you use the word insulting, and I'm going to use it too, to say that CEO, and you said it well, it's not the city manager, it's Anna, Craig, and Diane and the team making decisions. They're not doing it on a whim when 5 people come into the door. They spend so much time talking to the community, probably more than we do as council. And because we refer everything to you in the way of need. And so that's where the level of trust comes in, is they have a good pulse on the community. And in order to cut down some of the red tape of what it would take to bring it to council. Again, if you don't like the new program, you always have the authority as a council member to rescind or make changes. I like the way this is worded, and it streamlines a lot of the process. And if you have a good working relationship between council and the city manager and the staff, then you're all working for the same ultimate goal, which is to make this community better.
Yeah. Any other comments? I'm going to jump in on that one. I don't see how. I'm going to disagree with you, Councillor Hughes. I don't see any lack of awareness or any lack of accountability in what's being proposed here. Actually, I see what its intention is around flexibility and good governance, and then good role kind of definition. So, I mean, I'm looking at my experience sitting on CSAC or CSAB at the time, and there was many times I felt that, some of that authority could have been delegated down to us, particularly for some of the smaller grants, like the community events grant or the young artist grant, or the or some of those grants that we had there before, where we would have groups coming to us looking for a couple $100 or $500 per participant to go. And yet council was aware of those things because we had councillors sitting around the table, plus also they were all always reported, and it allowed council to recognize our young artists or our young athletes or participants in events that were important to our community. So I don't see that leaving. And I'm going to reiterate kind of what I said in some of the discussion. This is administration we're talking about, remove a person at the top. I mean, in other functions of government, I mean, we delegate our authority to administration, our CAO, for procurement reasons, even like we give them abilities to purchase and enter into contracts currently. So, I mean, and that's all reported in annually. So I'm not afraid of that. I think what we're trying to do is, as Councillor Killick's identified, is streamline processes. Be flexible and really define what the roles of governance and what the roles of administration are. And so I'm not going to support your amendment, Councillor Hughes. So anything to close?
Yeah, I think you misinterpreted my amendment. My amendment isn't about the delegation of who approves what is not even in this policy. That's a different discussion for a different day. This is about whether or not the city manager is going to be allowed to just simply approve civic new grant programs and create new ones. And we find out about it after the fact. And then I guess if we disagree, whenever we find out about it, I guess then we can say we want it removed. Why would we just not get approval for new grant programs from the front? All the details we're giving away, all of the details of the policies, all of the details. There's nothing left for the details except for the total amount and the name of the grant. And all I'm saying is, why don't we have council approve the name of the grant? That's pretty minimal. This isn't about delegation of funds. This is just about saying, yes, make a new grant. We agree. That's it. And if there was a new grant, maybe we'd want more money for it and not take it away from other grants. That's the only thing that I'm saying this would remove. With this, calling everything that council did for policies administrative is already a stretch. And it's convenient, takes us pretty much out of everything. The policy, the administration of it can be radically altered and we won't even know. I realize that right now it's not going to be, but that's today. All I'm saying with this is that council will agree to the new grant programs, which would require one motion because everything else is decided by someone else with this. I don't know what's the problem with having a council that's elected to represent the people agree to a new grant program. And that's what I'm asking for. And really, like, I just don't understand. I don't understand what the problem is. I'm really hoping that someone recognizes that. I would love to have council at least be aware before the grant program occurs that there's a new grant program that's occurring. And that's.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. I appreciate your comments. Call the question then on the amendment. All in favor? We have Councillor Urbanski, Councillor Hughes opposed. We have Mayor Herron and Councillor Mackay. So the amendment fails. Going back to the original motion then that's on the floor. Any discussion? Yes, you can open. Sorry, I apologize, Mayor Herron. You may open.
Okay. Delegation aside, reading this agenda report was enlightening and it brings me back many years, I would say, that we've been having conversations about streamlining our granting process and having things change, like allowing people from outside of St. Albert to apply for these kind of things. And there's always nuances in everything we do. And that's why I like the new policy, because it allows for that flexibility for those nuances to be adopted and adapted into our processes very quickly. So my only comment actually is this, thank you. Because I know going through all these policies, which I did not go read each, the ones we're rescinding, but you guys all did. And you looked for commonalities and you looked for, and the principles are really what gels us all together. And that's the most important thing. And I like that we're becoming a very principle-based type organization. Here's what we want, here's what we believe, here's how we're going to get there. So I thought it was a good policy, and I am looking forward to the next conversations about how we delegate, if we delegate, what thresholds we're looking at, what, those kind of things are interesting conversations. That's probably where the debate belongs, not here. So I'm pretty happy with what we've got.
Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to support this policy. I have a lot of hesitations with it. There was often debate about the specific policies and changing them by a council, about parameters, requirements, all that's been taken off our table. There's a lot here that's being like, this is too much for you to do, we'll do it for you. It's not the same as operating when you're agreeing to give grants to money to people. So I have serious problems. And I'm telling you right now, that amendment was a hill to die on for me. And that's the challenge I have right now, is delegating everything and saying, I just trust that everyone's going to have it all together. This council is appointed to make decisions and to determine how things are happening. And not only are we delegating everything out, but now we're going to be aware of it at some point in the future of what they're doing with the grant programs. We won't even know what the grant programs are. Like it blows my mind that now things can be shuffled around and we are basically outsourcing $1 million to say whatever and we'll just approve it later. Like, actually, we'll never have to worry about approving it. And the delegation, I feel is going to be also interesting. I suspect that there'll be much removed from council's recommendation. And do I have a problem with the $500, et cetera? No. But I have a problem with the direction that we're going with this. I have a problem with saying that council, everything they're doing is now not necessary for discussion. We won't know if changes occur at the administrative level for expectations. We won't even know. It's all under administrative. We don't see administrative orders. So we are literally just saying, here's $1 million. Here's the grants we started with. What ends up being from year to year, we don't even know. We'll just get an annual report. I mean, that's dangerous. And so I'll bring forward the amendment when it comes back to council again, because I want to have a council vote on this one, not just a committee vote. And I suspect that even if this fails will be the same as the last time, which is it gets brought forward anyway to council as a recommendation, which also makes me just wonder why I keep going to this committee, because I feel like my opinions, when I say no, are overruled when it comes to council opinions anyway. So just, I don't know, this is just disappointing again. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Veransky.
One comment I had is, say you're saying that, agencies from outside of St. Albert can apply. What if, this funding is given to outside agencies, say by this time of year, and then we've run out of money? And you're saying that the people from out of St. Albert, can apply, but that right now we're at a point where we have funding left over and people from St. Albert can still apply this year. If we've used up all the money, we're going to have administration coming back to us for more money, and then the outside of the city people would have got funding prior to citizens of St. Albert.
Was that a question, Councillor Veransky? Because
it is a question, yeah. Like if the money has run out from people that are outside of St. Albert, then they're all of a sudden ahead of the people that live in St. Albert.
We're actually debating the question, but I mean, I can if it helps in your vote in this particular time, I can let administration answer it. My understanding of it would be is similar to deal with the problem we had with program delivery. For example, when we got rid of our sidekicks mentoring through our local community organization, we relied on Big Brothers Big Sisters, and they are an outside administrative process that looks after program delivery and includes our St. Albert in that case. Is that potentially that? And so, or Wild North, for example, with the fact that we never had the capacity to deal with injured or captured wildlife. And so this allows us to provide some funding to that organization to assist in their operations, but that benefit our residents.
Okay, I just can't support this. There's too many things that are just not clear to me at this point in time. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much for the comments and your questions. I do support it, and a lot of the concerns that were raised in debate, I believe will come back to council, and we will have those discussions at council, and they will seek the clarity. I too am somewhat aware of the direct kind of change with the CAO, and that's why I asked my questions around it. But again, it was around more, not the CAO again, it's around the administration. This is a recommendation that will come back to council, and that some of the concerns identified, I would hope would be addressed in some of the changes to the overarching policy. So I support this, and I'm looking forward to it coming back. And for all of the reasons that we've had in discussions, both that were for it, and the reasons that they were for it, and also for some of the concerns that were raised. So I'm going to support it moving forward at this particular time. So anything to close, Mayor Hearn? Nothing to close. So all in favor? I have 2 yeses. Opposed? I have 2 noes. So it fails at committee to at this particular time. And thank you, administration. I appreciate that. And thank you. Anything else around the table? Anything else? I just have adjournment. Thank you, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Bermansky. Thank you, administration. I'm going to adjourn at 11:03. Councillor Bermansky, you have your hand up.
Just one question. There was no sound when you did attendance, so I didn't hear any of that first part. So as long as you got us online here. So.
Yeah, I got you online, and your comments. I did acknowledge you on attendance.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. All the best. Look after yourself. Thank you.